How are we doing? Thank you for covering this today. It's this critical minerals ministerial is off to a great start. We have 55 partners that we're hoping to enter into collaboration with. Many have already signed on, and the goal here is very simple. We all understand that having a reliable global supply chains and critical minerals and processed and finished materials are critical to everything we do, as I pointed out in my opening statements to the group. And I think this is a broader mistake made by the industrialized and developed world, as we all sort of fell in love with the design of these things, but forgot that in order to design something, you have to be able to build it, and in order to build it, you have to have the fundamental materials necessary to make it with. That's the key goal of a critical mineral supply, and today it's heavily concentrated in the hands of one country. And that lends itself to, at worst case scenario, being used as a tool of leverage in geopolitics, but it also lends itself to any sort of disruptions, like a pandemic or anything that could, political instability, or anything that could happen. And so it's key and important, and I think there's a growing global recognition that we need to have supply chains for critical minerals that are reliable and diverse across the world. Some countries have a number of critical minerals that they have available to them in terms of mining, but just haven't been able to do it because a foreign competitor will come in, they'll gut the price, they'll undercut it through state subsidies and unfair practices, and so it becomes economically unviable to be able to explore for critical minerals. In other cases, it's the processing. Again, it falls victim to the exact same thing. The private sector can't invest in these things because some competitor will come in and they'll basically do it under cost for purposes of establishing market share dominance. And then once they control that industry, and they're the only ones in the world that do it, then they can charge you anything they want, but they can also use it against you as leverage, or it could be disrupted if there's any sort of global disruption and so forth. And this is not a sustainable situation. So it's why we've made it a priority. First, we try to lead by example in what we've done here in the United States. And that includes permitting reform that makes it easier to go into this industry on the critical minerals we have here domestically, but also the creating demand, which is what the President announced yesterday by the announcement of a strategic stockpile of critical minerals. But we understand that this is a global challenge that requires a global response. And so we're working here today to create a forum for that to happen. And part of this is this new initiative, Forge, which we described earlier. We have a number of countries that have signed on to that, and many more that we hope will do so. That was our first session, was the launching of this Forge initiative. Let me just say I want to today. This afternoon, there'll be additional sessions led by Trade Representative Greer, who's going to present on a price floor mechanism, and that's designed to make sure that these commodities will never fall below a certain price so that they can become economically viable. The idea is to protect people's investments or investments in these sectors across the world. They'll hear from Secretary of Energy Wright. They'll hear from the Development Finance Corporation, they'll hear from the EXIM Bank, they'll hear from the Department of War. They're going to showcase financing tools and programs for critical minerals investment. And then Treasury Secretary Besant is going to close out later tonight, the ministerial, or later this afternoon. We're planning to sign new critical minerals frameworks with several partners later today. And I want to just highlight again, this is really a historic gathering and highlights the billions of dollars the United States government has already committed towards this endeavor, and that's going to enable private sector investment towards creating reliable supply chains that are vital, as I said, to technological innovation, economic strength, and also national security. So we thank you again for covering this, and we're grateful for all of our partners that are here today. And as I said, 55 partners, 54 countries in the European Union were here. And we think there are many more countries that are going to be interested in joining this initiative as it moves forward. And I think our team here did a great job of pulling this together. And of course, the day's not done. All right, let's get to your questions. And I apologize ahead of time. I know I did like a 2.5-hour press briefing late. I can't do that today because they need this room for the family photo. So they have to have us clear out so they could set that up. Okay, so, Tommy, you're going to call people just because if not, they'll get mad that I didn't call them. So they'll blame you.
Yeah.
All right.
First question, Alex Stalvey from Newsmax. Good morning, sir. The United States has a vested interest now in the critical minerals inside of Ukraine following last year's agreement. We know that the United States this week is monitoring and hosting, of course, trilateral talks between Kyiv and Moscow. And while there does seem to be a framework, at least when it comes to security guarantees, when it comes to any territorial disputes, there does not seem to be much movement one way or the other. Is there any progress being made on that front, and do critical minerals play into those conversations? And separately, sir, if I could also ask about the New START treaty with Russia that expires tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't have any announcement on New START right now. I think the president will opine on it later. Obviously, you know, the president's been clear in the past that in order to have true arms control in the 21st century, it's impossible to do something that doesn't include China because of their vast and rapidly growing stockpile. On the question of the talks, they're today and tomorrow in Abu Dhabi. Look, the good news is that for the first time in a very long time, we have technical military teams from both Ukraine and Russia meeting in a forum that we'll also be involved with, and our experts, Steve Woodcock and Jared Kushner will also be attending for part of that, and we think that's important. And look, I don't want to say talks alone are progress, but it's good that there's engagement going on. I would also caution everyone that on things like this, because there's a lot of sensitivities involved in it, progress is probably not going to be known, even via leaks, until we really have a breakthrough. Our goal is to remain committed. We've committed a year to this. We think we've made real progress. If you look at the checklist of open items that existed at this time last year and the checklist of open items that remain now in terms of reaching a peace agreement between Ukraine and Russia, that list has been substantially diminished. That's the good news. The bad news is that the items that remain are the most difficult ones. And meanwhile, the war continues. So all I can say in that regard is that we are investing at a very high level, a substantial amount of time and energy to this endeavor. We are going to continue to do everything we can to see if there's a breakthrough. And one of the things to understand about ending armed conflicts is oftentimes it looks totally hopeless until you have this breakthrough that sometimes is unforeseen. That was certainly the experience with Gaza, where a lot of people thought that was a hopeless situation, but we kept pushing and pushing, and then circumstances aligned and made it possible. And obviously, that's what we're going to endeavor to do here as well. As far as critical minerals are concerned, look, that's a part of economic prosperity for Ukraine and its future. This war will end at some point, and when it does, Ukraine needs to be able to harness all of the resources of their country to be able to rebuild it. Ukraine has tremendous economic potential. It is a country that could probably double its GDP in the next decade with the right economic moves, and we certainly think that is a part of an enduring peace. And so a lot of work and thinking has gone into that ahead of time, and so that hopefully it will be able to be actioned on as soon as the war comes to a conclusion.
Our next question will be from Julio Iriart from La Nación.
Good morning, Secretary. Specifically, what role can Argentina play in this agreement on critical minerals? And also I would like to ask if U.S. is in talks with Argentina for sending their immigrants deported from third countries. Thank you so much.
Yeah, on the second point, I would say, look, we have conversations about countries willing to accept third-party nationals, but we don't have any deal